Hi, I'm Debbie Nelson with Nixene Publishing. I'm a contributing editor and project manager. We're doing a series on graphene with Adrian Nixon, editor-in-chief of the Nixene Journal, and he comes to us from Yorkshire, England. Hi, Adrian.
Hello, Debbie. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. So in today's discussion about graphene, we have something really new and revolutionary. I call it revolutionary. This is some breakthroughs with graphene in regards to cancer. So can
Yeah,
you tell us a bit, Adrian, what's going on?
there's quite a lot of work going on in the field of cancer with graphene. This particular one is linked to something called electrotherapy. And to explain what's going on, I probably need to share my screen again. Is that okay? So
Absolutely.
if I just share my screen, and we'll go to this one and run that. Good. You should be able to see a white screen, Debbie.
Yep, it's right there.
Again, I'll let this one build, so because what's going on is a little bit complicated. So to start off with, this is a startup company in the UK, and they've been looking at something called glioblastoma multiforme, brain cancer, and addressing this with electrotherapy. Now, the thing about brain cancers of the brain is they can be, when a cancer grows in the brain, you can have surgery to have it removed. And sometimes the cancer is fairly well defined. So if you can imagine it's like a soccer ball shape, then you
Mhm.
could identify it and pull it out. But there are some other types of cancer where it will actually get into all the squishy bits of the brain, and you can't work out where the brain begins and the cancer ends. And so when the surgeon removes the cancer, there are little bits left. And the problem is, if any small bits are left, any remaining cancer cells are there, what happens is the cancer comes back again and after surgery, and the patients only live probably a year or two beyond the intervention. So it's actually quite a traumatic thing to try and treat, and it's not always successful. Now, there is a process called electrotherapy, and it turns out that if you have a strong electric field that is broadcast over the area where the cancer cells are growing, it seems to stop the cancer cells dividing. And what happens is that holds the cancer in stasis. So it doesn't kill it, it just stops the cancer from growing. And the net effect is that patients live longer and after the surgery. But the downside is that because the skull attenuates the electrical signal, you have to wear this great big hat, a crash helmet thing almost, with great big electrical plates in it, and then a huge battery pack you've got to carry around with you. And all that heavy duty electric equipment means that you don't really have a good quality of life going forward. So it's while electrotherapy is great in principle, in practice, it's very difficult to sort of live with it afterwards. This is where graphene comes in. So there's a company called QV Biomedical that we met at the beginning of the year. I think we saw them in January, and the people behind us told us what was going on. It's quite amazing what they've been doing. So they've developed a graphene implant. And the way graphene comes in here, do you remember, Debbie, that graphene is highly electrically conductive?
Yes.
So what that means is you can put graphene into the brain and connect it up to an electric circuit. Now, the other thing about graphene is, you'll also remember, is it doesn't interact with body tissues very much. So it's, as far as we can tell, it's non-toxic and doesn't seem to have any major health effects on the body. So we've now got this electrically conductive material which is fairly inert and becomes a fairly ideal medical implant. And so what the guys have done is they've developed this electrically conductive graphene implant that they put inside the body. And that is an electric field generator that is actually inside the body, right up close to where the cancer cells are. And what that means is, because this electric signal doesn't have to go through from the outside, through the skull, through the brain to get to where the cancer is, it's right up against it. You can use smaller electrical current to get the same effect. And what they've done is they've implanted a battery in just under the skin, connected up to the implant, and that appears to now do exactly the same job and probably better, giving the patients a longer life expectancy, because from the outside they just look like normal people and they don't have to carry around all this equipment and then have a better quality of life. What do you
Yeah,
think?
yeah, definitely a better quality of life because you can still, come and go and do as you please.
Yeah,
And then the having the graphene implant would seem to be a lot more effective than having to go all the way through the skull and, whatever else it's running into. I mean, this is like much more centralized too.
yeah, yeah, it is. It's important also to say it's not, the graphene doesn't do this by itself. You have to use the graphene electric field generator in combination with anti-cancer drugs as well. So it's part of a package, but it really does seem to work, and it's a great innovation.
Yeah, it sounds so important that, thinking back to when we were talking about taking fantastic ideas that have been developed in the lab out into the marketplace, that you don't want something like this to get lost in that gap, the valley of death that you
Yeah,
called it,
yeah, yeah.
which really this is a life and death type of a thing too.
Definitely, yeah. So for viewers who've not seen a previous episode, I think that was, we talked about the Valley of Death when we were talking about the geek and the NGI, didn't we?
Yes,
So roughly what the Valley of Death is, you have ideas which can be developed at university level, and they're funded at that stage by traditional routes. And then at the other end of the scale, we've got industry ready, commercially supported products where investors can pile in, they understand the risks, and everything's fine, it's well supported. But between those two, there's a gap where the university funding stops, but the private investment sees it as too risky and don't understand it properly. And it means that lots of great inventions never get funded.
mm,
And so, what's been really good about this is that because the guys came through the NGI and the Geek, then they've got on the radar of some more enlightened people at government, and they've actually got, I think, about €150,000 of funding, and they've moved to London to carry on their work for the moment. So that should help them through the valley of death a little bit further, till a private investor can come along and take a look at them and say, yeah, I'll take the risk and go with it, because
yeah,
this is really going to make a difference to people's lives.
yeah, that's fantastic. And the geek was part of that. It helped
Yeah,
them.
we met the chief exec, Chris Bullock, with Simon Howell at the Geek, and then they came on our radar, and now they've passed through the Geek and gone on to other people's radar as well down in London. So yeah, they're doing all right now. Fingers crossed, they should be okay. But this is a live development opportunity, a piece of innovation which is going on right now. So we don't know exactly how it all ends.
Yeah, it's really good news and something to really keep your eye on.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And
if
it's
you,
also worthwhile telling the viewers that we don't have any interest in these companies. We're just purely an independent outside viewer. If we see something that looks good, looks important, we'll tell people about it. And we don't make any money out of this. There's no gain for us other than the fascination of finding something good and telling people about it.
oh, absolutely, the exciting advances that keep happening because of graphene and all the other 2D materials that are coming into play.
Yeah, it's what
So
we do, isn't it?